Welcome into another episode of The Install with Greg Cosell of NFL Films. Greg, it's good to see you. Titans have joint camp in Minnesota. I'm not going up until Friday to cover the game on Saturday night, but unfortunately, the reports out of Vikings camp have been with Treylon Burks getting carted off after an injury today. A really, really tough loss and a tough way to start this week.
Yeah, I mean, let's just hope for the best. We don't know now. I guess it only happened about, we're speaking on Wednesday afternoon, 4 o'clock Eastern time. It just happened about an hour or so ago. So we don't know details. So we're not going to speculate. Let's just be optimistic and hope maybe it's only a couple of weeks and he can be back. Obviously I was down there last week. We spent a lot of time together, and I thought that Treylon Burks looked pretty good. I felt like he looked like the receiver I saw on tape coming out of Arkansas.
Yeah, no, I think we all had felt good about the progress that he'd made, and certainly with Hopkins and him as more a complementary piece to what they're trying to do. I think there was a lot of good positive vibes around Treylon Burks in heading into year two. So, like you said, knock on wood, we'll hope for the best. And at this time, not enough information for us to discuss anything beyond that. But there is plenty of things for us to talk about based on the Titans preseason action, Greg. Yeah. Both quarterbacks getting almost equal amounts of reps. They split series in this one to kind of simulate in terms of situational football what it is for a backup quarterback to come in off the bench. Malik Willis was the starter. He got the opening drive with the Titans starting offensive line, and I wonder what you made of him now that we've seen him for the first time in live game reps basically since Christmas Eve.
Yeah, and let's start with kind of a 30,000-foot overview. I thought overall Willis was significantly better than what we saw last year. And I think we would all agree, coaches would agree as well, that last year was a tough watch, that he wasn't really ready to play in meaningful NFL games a year ago. He wasn't seeing things. He was playing really fast. He just didn't have a sense of the offense and where the ball needed to go within the timing and structure of the play designs. And that was so evident on tape. I thought in watching this, and again, yes, it's preseason, but you can see a player by just his comfort level. And I thought that there was significant improvement in his comfort level, his overall poise. I thought he was much quicker mentally, which allowed his body to slow down and work with more efficiency from the pocket. When you're quicker mentally and you see things, you slow down. It might sound counterintuitive, but you hear that phrase all the time in sports that the game slowed down. The reason the game slows down is because you're seeing things the right way at the time you're supposed to see them. Yeah. So therefore you can kind of play. It almost looks deliberate. I'm not comparing Willis obviously to great quarterbacks. He's nowhere near that, and we don't know what the future holds. But just think of really good quarterbacks. When they drop back, everything looks kind of deliberate. They never look hurried, right? Right, Buck? You can see that. And Willis just, he just played more slowly. He played more efficiently. You can tell he saw things.
It's the kind of incremental improvement that he's supposed to make, right? I mean, this was always kind of supposed to be the case for Malik, Greg,
correct,
in what the quarterback class was in 2022, and what his kind of progression was going to look like. If anything, you could almost consider him a bit ahead, given the fact that he had no business being in NFL games last year and had to out of necessity.
That's correct. And, again, he was a third-round pick for a reason. And we discussed this last year and even throughout the offseason that, the job of the coach at Liberty, who was Hugh Freeze at the time, is to win games. And Malik Willis is a great athlete with a big power arm. So very often he would drop back. And my guess is he was told this. I don't know this for a fact, but based on extensive film study of his tape at Liberty, I would bet to a large degree that he was told, hey, if that first read isn't there and you feel like you can make a play with your legs, you take off. Now, that worked at Liberty. He made, as you know, because you saw him play at Liberty, once he was drafted, I'm sure you went back and looked at a lot of him. We know he made tremendous plays with his legs because he's a very fast athlete. and he was playing college football. Obviously, you can't live like that in the NFL. In the NFL, you have to learn how to play within the structure. You have to have an understanding not only of your offense, but of the defenses you're playing against. And he wasn't ready for that a year ago. Um, very often when guys don't see things, and I know I said this last year, that sometimes they never get to that point. And again, one preseason game doesn't mean that all of a sudden he's seeing everything beautifully. But I thought that the improvement was clear on tape. It was a positive thing to see. Now let's hope it just continues in that direction. But he looked like he could play NFL quarterback, and I don't mean that sarcastically or in any. That's not a backhanded compliment. As you said, this is what the staff's looking for.
Yeah. No, I mean, Greg, that like it's exactly like, I'm glad that you said it that way, because like last year he wasn't capable of playing NFL quarterback last
No,
year.
he was
That's
not.
why they had to put Dobbs in the
Right.
lineup to give them the best opportunity to win games. He wasn't ready. And we understand that, where he is in his progression. And again, it is one preseason game. It's basically a practice. And I thought Terrell Williams, who was the acting head coach for this game, spoke to that well. They put him in game-like situations with live tackling and no coaches around the quarterback saying, don't hit the quarterback, right? This is the best opportunity for us to kind of see the clear and obvious improvement as you've described it in a as close to real game application as humanly possible.
And again, having said that, look, he played the next to last drive in the fourth quarter before Levis came on. I thought Willis did a nice job. He looked comfortable. He looked poised on that later fourth quarter drive. I thought he delivered the ball for the most part on time with good ball placement. I thought the Harris 23-yarder from the plus 35-yard line was a very good example of Willis working from the pocket. He read coverage. He delivered it to the right receiver. It was what we call a high-low concept to the boundary versus cover 4. I thought he did a really nice job there. Now, he did miss then there was a play after that on 2nd and 8 in the red zone where he missed an opportunity within the structure of play, and then obviously missed the opportunity outside of structure when he overthrew Kinsey, who was open in the back of the end zone. But there were far more positives in this game than negatives when it came to Willis, and overall, I think this was a step in the right direction.
Agreed. Before we go to Will Levis, let's stick with the Titans starting offensive line. It was one drive. But this is a new collection of players. The coaching staff obviously wanted to see and give them the opportunity to hit somebody who wasn't in a Titans uniform. Greg, it's been mixed results for them in camp, and we know that the Titans have a good defensive front that they're seeing on a regular basis. But I wonder what your assessment was, because from our vantage point, it looked improved from what we had been seeing for basically a month in practice.
It did. And, I know some people point to a play here and there that wasn't very good there was one by Dillard where, I personally think he needs to be more proactive with his hands and pass protection. I don't know how Mike Sullivan feels. I don't know how he's coached. But the thing is, if you have late and wide hands, okay? If you have late and wide hands, that allows the pass rusher to get into your chest and inside of you. And that's what you don't want. But Dillard, you saw the smooth, light feet. You saw the easy movement and pass protection. He's got fluid, loose hips. He's got really comfortable lateral movement. I thought that he did a good job in the run game, which is probably what they're really looking to see, because that's not something he did in college, as you well know, coming from Washington State when Mike Leach was the head coach, and he played literally every play call was a pass, and he played in a 2-point stance and really never had a fire off the ball. I thought Skoronski overall did well. There's one play that I guess made it on social media where Edwards, kind of got him a little bit on, down in the low red zone. But I thought that he did a really good job. There was a 9-yard run by Spears on the first possession where Skoronski had an excellent base block on the 3-technique Jones. He got his hands inside and underneath, and he just moved Jones off the line of scrimmage. I think overall, those two players, Dillard and Skoronski, had solid performances for the first game.
I had Skoronski on the radio show. I guess that would have been Monday, Greg. And I just asked him to articulate for the audience, like, what it is the difference for him to learn how to play guard after almost exclusively having been a tackle, and kind of the things that he's had to adjust, and the idea that it's just so much faster on the inside for an offensive lineman, and that he's had to kind of adjust his footwork, his technique, his hand placement, and things like that. And like you said, it's not perfect. None of these guys are going to come out of a preseason game or a game with a perfect performance. But you can clearly see him taking steps, and the fact that they trust him, I don't want to say implicitly, but they trust him a lot for a rookie offensive lineman. I think you're seeing that he's capable of handling those responsibilities the way that a lot of people were able to assess about him in the pre-draft process.
And it's interesting that he said that, because that's so true. When you're playing tackle, very often you have more space between yourself and the defensive end. And whereas when you're playing inside, they're right on top of you right away.
Yeah.
And it's just a different way you have to get into your blocks. It's just different. And you have to learn that, because it's just, the whole position, people just assume, oh, yeah, and happens through the draft process, as you well know, and I'm guilty of it as well. I'm not immune from it, but we all assume if we don't think someone can play tackle in the NFL, we say, oh, he's a guard. Yeah. Well, you have to learn how to play guard. It's not just, oh, put him at guard and we're good to go. So it was interesting he said that, because that's so true. Everything does happen quicker because the bodies are closer together.
Yeah, and I think thus far, it's clearly an adjustment, but he seems to be handling it on the correct trajectory. Will Levis didn't get the opportunity to play behind the Titans starting offensive line. We'll see what their plan for them on Saturday night against Minnesota will be. It's our expectation that Ryan Tannehill is not going to play, but these things are fluid, so we'll wait and see. But Levis, I think there was a lot of stuff that made you reminiscent of his college tape, right? He's got some things that he's got to work out in terms of feel and pressure. There were some missed opportunities as well, but for the most part, I thought, it was a fine outing for a rookie quarterback, comparative to what we saw from the rest of the rookies this weekend.
Yeah, I thought that he I'm trying to think of the best way to say this before we get into some specifics. I would say overall it was a positive. The one
I thought
thing
he managed. I came away thinking okay, he managed, right?
Like I came away believing that, he looked like he belonged on an NFL field. Yeah. Like it didn't look like, oh my God, this guy's really struggling out there just to get simple things done. Mm-hmm. That was not the case at all. He looked fine in that regard. Now, I think that he needs to develop more precision with his ball location. He has a power arm, he can flick it with ease, but he must be more precise, even on some completions. I mean, he had a great example was he hit McMath for 21 yards on 3rd and 13. I don't know if you remember this specific play. It was his 3rd possession. He did a really nice job with a shoulder roll to hold the cover 2 corner low, and then he threw to McMath on the outcut in the outside void. Good read, good job. Somewhat of a veteran move with the shoulder roll, but it was a bad throw. Now, McMath caught it and it was 21 yards, but it wasn't a good throw. Right. And to me, and again, having learned the position mostly from Bill Walsh, that's a negative. That's the throw has to be more precise. So, things like that. I think that's one thing that stood out to me is he just has to become a little more precise, and we'll see how that goes, as he continues to play. Obviously a lot of people are looking at the final interception. I have a different point of view on that, which I don't know for a fact. Maybe you do in talking to people. Okay. I thought McMath hung him out to dry. I think that it was a dagger concept. And like I said, I could be wrong. If there's any, I doubt coaches are listening to me right now, but I thought that McMath was running the dig route. That's what dagger is. It's an inside vertical and a dig route underneath it from the outside. And I thought McMath was running the dig route underneath or behind that he should have been behind the coverage. And I think because of the time of the game, the underneath coverage dropped a little deeper, and McMath just kind of cut off his route when he saw that, hey, the underneath coverage was deeper than I thought. And I think he just stopped. And I think Levis threw it with timing and anticipation to where he expected McMath to be, and he wasn't there. And therefore, it looked like, oh, my God, who's he throwing it to? That's a terrible interception. Now, I could be wrong. I don't think I am, but I could be wrong.
I would say you're more right than wrong based on talking to Tim Kelly I guess that would have been earlier in the week. Because we asked him about both of the interceptions that the quarterbacks threw, and he said, listen, you got to understand that yeah, like on Malik's, for example, the ball has to be a little lower, but Josh Wiley's got to make that catch, right?
Right. I mean, that's a perfect example of where you get into there's two sides to that. You're 100% right. In an ideal world, you'd say that's an inaccurate throw, but also the receiver does have to make that catch.
Yeah, like
But
it. I mean, it hit him in the head. Like so. So
yeah,
to the same extent, he didn't quite specifically lay out what Racy was supposed to do, but he said that he basically alluded to the quarter. It wasn't completely on the quarterback in that situation.
yeah, that was I watched that play 15 times, as you could probably imagine,
Yeah.
because I know what the feeling is, because Levis has a reputation, some deserved, some not deserved, as you well know. And people just automatically assumed, oh, there's Will Levis being Will Levis. He's a bonehead. What a stupid throw. So I watched the play over and over and over. And, I've seen enough football and I know route concepts. And that's what I thought finally after watching it over and over, that, hey, he was throwing with timing and anticipation on what was essentially a dig route. And McMath kind of shut it down because the underneath coverage dropped deeper, almost to where he would make his cut for the dig route, and he just kind of stopped.
Yeah. No, I mean, to the same effect, like Greg, not the Titans starting offensive line, but the depth guys after that, who we'll touch on here shortly. They allowed 8 sacks against Chicago. And
right.
We asked Tim Kelly about that. He said, more than half of that is on the quarterbacks. You got to know when the journey's over. To the same extent, right? The offensive line is going to get blamed, at least from a 1,000-foot view, for 8 sacks. When in reality, there's both sides to that story in the same way that you're describing with McMath and Levis.
Yeah, and I think it's important to understand that. And by the way, it's also important to understand this. You want to see young players, particularly quarterbacks, make mistakes in these games. And maybe a lot of people don't understand that, but you want to see that. I mean, obviously, in an ideal world, would you love every play to be perfectly executed? That's unrealistic. And in some ways, that's not helpful for coaching and teaching over the long haul. You want to see them make mistakes. So now you can sit in the film room, you can go on the practice field, and you can work through it, and you can coach it, and you can get a sense of, hey, here's what he can do well. And you know what? Maybe he can't do this well, and maybe it's fixable. Maybe it's not. Maybe that's something we don't want to ask him to do. I still remember Bill Walsh telling me, and this might be crazy to some people, that there were a couple of throws Joe Montana couldn't make. We didn't call those throws. Now, because Joe Montana is, one of the top 2 or 3 best quarterbacks of all time, people might think, oh, you're crazy. That's Joe Montana. Well, but that's coaching, and you want to learn those things. I'm sure I've told you this story before, but it's worth reiterating. When Ron Jaworski was with the Eagles and Dick Vermeil brought Sid Gilman in late in Sid Gilman's career, and Sid Gilman is viewed as the father of the modern day passing game, Sid Gilman used to tell Jaws, hey, preseason practices, training camp, and preseason games, that's the time to find out what you can do and what you can't do. And he says, I don't care if you throw 5 interceptions. We need to find out what it is you can do and what you can't do. So I know better in a game, and you know better in a game, in a real game. So, don't judge necessarily by the result, because coaches deal with this stuff differently than fans might.
Well, and like I came out of that, so we met with them immediately afterwards, right? In the post-game press conference, Greg, and the fact that like Levis could immediately articulate the situation where he made the mistakes, what he did wrong,
right,
and where the throw should have been afterwards. I mean, within a matter of 20 minutes afterwards with us at the podium, it speaks to why the coaching staff felt confident in drafting him where they did, because they went through that same process with him too. He brought up the idea, and it's not something that had ever occurred to me, but like the idea that these guys don't have surfaces in college to watch the plays on immediately after drives. And Levis was, it was his first time utilizing the surface after a drive with Charles London and Tim Kelly to see in front of him after he sits on the bench his mistakes and make the corrections as a result. Like, it's all like they're practices.
It's all new, and you just have to accept that. Look, we live in a world of immediate gratification, and everybody wants it to be great. And like I said, in many ways, coaches don't want it to be great because, first of all, they're not playing in a game where the defense game plan. I'm sure the Titans didn't do major game planning either. So, if either Willis or Levis has to start in a regular season game early in the season, we hope that's not the case. Obviously, we don't want Ryan Tannehill to get hurt. But if that's the case, you want to find out, Tim Kelly needs to know how he can build a game plan and what he can call in critical situations.
Yeah, that's exactly what they're working on, situational football in these preseason games and throughout the course of training camp. Let's talk about another rookie, the running back, Tyjae Spears.
Yeah.
I really liked what I saw from him.
Yeah.
And I thought, in not a ton of work, which I think speaks to what the coaching staff thinks of him as well, Greg. He really made an impact, and you saw all of the kind of traits that make him a capable 3-down runner at this level.
Yeah, he was one of my favorite guys to watch coming out of college, coming out of Tulane, because I didn't know much about him at all. He runs with a really low center of gravity, which kind of gives him some natural power, even though he's not a big guy. I think you saw that. He had a 6-yard run on 3rd and 1 on the first possession where he just, it seemed like it wasn't blocked exceptionally well. Although that was a play, by the way, where Dillard had a really strong combo block working up to the second level to block the linebacker Sewell. But Spears just gained 6 yards, getting into the bodies, and he just has such a low center of gravity. And then he had that 14-yard run on the pin pull concept, where Hubbard was the lead blocker kicking out the corner, and he stiff-armed the filling safety Jackson, who's obviously a starting player in the league. So I thought Spears, he looked really good, and I thought he looked to me the way he did at Tulane.
Yeah, no, I think it's what their deployment strategy for Derrick Henry and Tajay Spears and the rest of their personnel, right? It remains a question until such time as we see it in principle. But like you and I have talked about this before, Greg. That dude wasn't drafted here to get 5 touches a game. They're going to find a way to get him involved, and I think he's clearly showing that he's a capable player, not just from the preseason sample size, although that is the best way or the best opportunity for them to evaluate their run game.
And you and I both know that Tim Kelly is going to be more expansive offensively than they were in the previous couple of years, more expansive with his use of personnel, with his formations. And I think Spears clearly fits that mold. How many snaps he gets in a given week once we start the regular season will probably be opponent specific and game flow specific, but he's not going to play 3 snaps a game.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. It's it's one of the many things that I'm excited to see once this team opens up in New Orleans to start week 1. Quickly though, Greg, nobody feels good about their offensive line depth around the league in all likelihood. Like it's tough to find good starting offensive linemen in the first place.
And that takes time for cohesion too.
Sure. But at this point, the depth that we saw on Saturday afternoon at Chicago was not anything that would inspire great confidence. I do want to ask you about Jalen Duncan, though. 6th-round pick. He's listed as their backup left tackle right now. He's somebody who's got high-level athletic traits, and that's why they liked him coming out of Maryland. But I wonder what you saw from him in a more expanded sample size of tape.
Yeah, he played significant snaps at left tackle. Again, it wasn't poor. He at times showed a tendency in pass protection to drop his head just before contact with the pass rusher. Obviously, you do not want to do that. I thought that there was a sack with Levis on a shot play late in the 3rd quarter. That came later in the down. Levis was about to turn it loose on the deep crosser. Duncan was blocking the edge rusher. I don't think he did a bad job because it was late in the down, but technically he got beat. Yeah. But I don't think it was a bad performance. I think again, something to build upon. In an ideal world, he's not going to get snaps at left tackle in the regular season. We'll see obviously how it plays out. Unfortunately, the kid that had a really tough time was the left tackle Johnson from North Dakota State. He really had a difficult time. There were just too many snaps in which he looked overmatched.
Yeah, Zach Johnson, number 68, as Greg mentioned, a player that was signed this offseason. Before we wrap up for the afternoon, Greg, I just wanted to quickly touch on. I assume you've watched Anthony Richardson against the Bills.
I
did. His performance. I think there's a lot of things that are going to inspire confidence. He's already been named the starting quarterback this week by Shane Steichen. There's a lot of things going on in Indianapolis right now that impact things off the field, right? And there's nothing that they can do to control those. But I just keep coming back to confidence in Anthony Richardson's development because of Shane Steichen and because of that running game with Jonathan Taylor. I just think they're going to come out at least the gates with a sound and solid running attack because that quarterback's just got so much explosive athletic ability.
Yeah, and I think, they'll run an offense similar to the Eagles, as we've discussed, where that really will help Richardson because it forces the defense to have to play a certain way, which allows him to see things more clearly. I think that he still needs a lot of work with his footwork and balance when delivering the ball. He's got such a strong arm. I mean, there were plays that were examples, I think, of what you'll see. He hit the tight end Granson for 20 yards, which is what I call shotgun bang play action, kind of a condensed skinny post over the middle. You'll see that kind of play with Richardson at quarterback. It's the run game element. It's a defined one read throw. He obviously made that great throw to Pierce, which should have been caught. Great throw, sail route versus tight man coverage. He's a very gifted guy. He throws the ball very, very easily. And when they game plan, his run game element will be a much bigger factor. But I think it's the right thing to play him because defenses have to play a certain way. And I think that gives the Colts a little bit of an advantage in how they go about game planning.
I've never seen a step back interception before, though, Greg. That was a pretty interesting, and these things are going to happen. Like you said, his mechanics are going to break down as all rookies do in certain situations. And
that's a great learning play. That's a great learning play.
It was absolutely.
Again, that's just what again. Now you talk to him about it. As soon as he did that, he knew. By the way, I mean, guys know as soon as you do something really poorly, and he knew. I mean, I guarantee it. He knew.
Yeah, I'm just looking forward to watching all these young quarterbacks in the AFC South. It's going to be a fun year.
It really is. It really is.
It's an exciting time to be sure. It's always an exciting time to have football season back in our lives, even though the grind doesn't stop for our main man, Greg Cosell. Greg, always appreciate the time. Looking forward to getting back together next week after some preseason action in Minnesota. I'm going to be there Saturday night instead of here to watch Lionel Messi play against the MLS club. Tickets going for $12 grand in the lower bowl right now at a 30,000 seat stadium. So I don't think I'd be able to get in anyway. But at least I'll watch some Julius Chestnut snaps.
Well, there you go. There you go.
See you, buddy.
All right. Thanks.